Good morning, everybody. This is Monday morning's edition of Ask the Master Auto Technician, and today's guest host today I have is Frank Sunderman. He's been on here before, but besides him being on radio before, and he's been on NPR a lot, he also flies an airplane. And we sometimes talk about the difference between airplanes and cars and similarities and differences. And one of the things I'd like to talk about this morning is the similarities that I like to see happen. Right now we have braking by wire, where there's actually no physical contact between your foot pedal and the hydraulics or whatever to make the car stop. It's all electronically controlled by using a potentiometer. And I know that airplanes have had steering by wire for years now, and it's just a matter of time before cars are steering by wire. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there to Frank. Frank, good morning, sir. I wanted to ask you what you thought about steering by wire this morning in cars, since y'all have had it in airplanes for so long. I figured, I'd throw that out there. What you thought about that idea, steering by wire. I know I kind of caught you off guard, probably.
No, not at all. Not at all. I stayed up all last night reading up on it because actually, some cars already have a version of it already.
True.
Because I believe BMW is one of the cars. Some of their models have eliminated the steering wheel just to save weight. Not the steering wheel, but the steering shaft.
Steering shaft.
The intermediate shaft that goes between the wheel and the rack. So that's already been eliminated, and instead, as you say, they run a potentiometer between there and the steering rack, and it just takes the electrical inputs, and a motor now steers it.
That's true. And planes have had that for, I don't know how long, 30 years now, 40 years maybe, planes, jets?
Maybe 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
The big thing with airplanes, you have to remember, that's an awful lot of weight and leverage that
True.
You have to move across. And as planes got bigger, they started using hydraulic motors to start to power servos that essentially did the heavy lifting. Because you can imagine that something weighs 50 tons, and you're trying to move something 75 to 150 feet away from you, like a tail, like a rudder or a tail. That's an awful lot of pipe. That's an awful lot of hydraulic hose. Plus, you've got to have redundancy.
Well, yeah, and if someone loses your power steering in your car, you're talking about heavy trying to steer one. If you try to, even conventional power steering, if your power steering pump goes out and you try to steer it, it's like takes two hands and a man to move it. And it still is tough to drive. But yet you can still drive it. And that's the thing I think they're trying to figure out is redundancy, is how, because you don't want to be out there steering and all of a sudden there's no connect between your steering wheel and your steering. You're talking about there's no intermediate shaft between the steering wheel and the rack and pinion. It's all electronic. And I think that's one of the things we're worried about is, we had that accident not long ago where the lady got killed out in Arizona in the crosswalk with a Tesla. The computer autonomous driven cars, I know they got to be better than human error, because human error accounts for so many accidents. And I got a feeling that's going to be the future in the next 10 to 15 years. I think autonomous vehicles are really going to be more on the road than we're seeing now. And we're not seeing that much now, but they're coming. I just want to know what you would be thinking about that.
Well,
go ahead.
As a driver of fun vehicles, I'm absolutely very not for it, because to me, to find a fun sports car and go down a winding road is a lot of fun.
Right. It is.
These days, as I travel a lot, I'm mostly on the highway where the roads are anything but winding, and it gets pretty monotonous.
That's true.
However, you are already seeing little pieces of the puzzle happening. The newest cars have auto steering, auto brake. They already are to some degree automated right now.
Parallel parking, that's something.
Yeah. Yes. You're seeing this already happening. The sensors to do a lot of the stuff are already in place. They may not be working, but like Subaru, for instance, if somebody steps in front of you, the car will go into a braking mode or A Mercedes now has a kind of a cruise control, which essentially monitors you and the cars around you, and essentially keeps you at a safe distance. So you're seeing pieces of this happening already. But here's the part that concerns me. It's not the connection between the steering wheel and the front wheel. It's the connection between the steering wheel and the brain of the driver. That's the part that's really in danger.
Well, because if you're not paying attention, things happen. Matter of fact, in every one of these cars where there's been a death, there was someone in the driver's seat. But it happened so fast, the accidents happen.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things out there. And I know if we keep waiting to become 100% perfect, we'll always be waiting. But I have a feeling that, the idea of braking by wire, that seems so far-fetched, but we have it now. Even my Prius, when you push the brake pedal down, you're actually not pushing hydraulics to push the pads to stop the car. You're actually pushing down a puck that makes the engine go into regenerative mode, where it actually gears down to give you the impression your car is stopping. And the brake pads don't even make contact till you're below 7 miles an hour or in a panic stop where you have to slam on brakes. That's the only time they come in contact. So we've been doing this for a while now, and I was reading someplace that even back 11, 12, 13 years ago, they were experimenting with autonomous cars and how they work. And it's pretty incredible. I see what was 11 years ago, someone was talking about called a DARPA Urban Challenge, where this vehicle called Dexter had no pedals, neither a driver's seat nor steering wheel, but it was all autonomous, and it would figure out how to go maneuver. So this technology has been around for a while. So when it starts becoming mainstream, we'll probably be seeing it in our children's lifetime, our grandchildren's lifetime in my case. I have a feeling that even children aren't going to be driving cars, because we've talked about this before. I was visiting my grandchildren this weekend, and I was talking to them. I said, are you excited about maybe getting a car when you get a little older? It's kind of like, yeah, okay. I said, well, how are you going to get around? He says, all I got to do is pick up my phone and call Uber. And I go, oh, I didn't think about that. So transportation is already being covered by young people, so he's not interested in a car so much. But one of the things that I did see is that also children don't get out and do things on the beach like when I was 15, 16 years old, I couldn't wait to get in a sailboat or a John boat and get away and explore and everything. I don't see that even in my grandkids. They seem to be more happy with cell phones and playing games on them instead of getting out and driving a car or driving a boat or something. I mean, it's just how society is changing. I never thought I would see it where we become electronically controlled, but that seems to be what's happening on our children. They're more interested in playing games and watching videos and communicating with their friends on social network than they are exploring, getting in boats, swimming, biking, the things that you and I grew up with. And I got a feeling that's not really a good way to go. Maybe I'm being a little melodramatic, but I know that in the future, that I think that if you have children that are combined to electricity or something like that and they can't entertain themselves, there's a strong possibility that they could actually develop some sort of neurosis, I think, if that electricity went away, or they weren't able to have that handheld device. I just don't think it builds for good individuals. That's just my opinion, but what the heck. It's a TV show, so who knows what we're talking about, including myself. Sometimes I don't.
We have gotten so dependent on technology, everything from electricity, and it's changed our lives. Air conditioning has made it possible for people to live in Florida and Arizona.
Yeah,
where here is a number for you, James. You as a historian will appreciate it. Fort Adams in Florida in 1907
Fort Adams had 100 people in it. Okay? The area around Fort Adams right now has close to 6 million people. Where is Fort
You know what the town is?
Miami?
Yes.
Oh, I just guessed. I just threw that out there. I had no idea.
Yes.
I just knew I knew prior to Flagler's Railroad coming down and prior to electricity and air conditioning, Florida was uninhabitable.
Yes, and mosquitoes. Let's not forget mosquitoes.
Well, I mean, this is walking malaria down here. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, even St. Joe was wiped out in the yellow fever epidemic of 1840, 1850, somewhere in that general area. And so, I mean, so mosquitoes and bad weather and, being so hot down here, I think the only reason Florida capital of Tallahassee is because it wasn't quite as hot as the other parts of Florida. Maybe that might have been the reasons it became the capital. I don't know. But things are definitely changing and towards, I don't know, maybe it's for the better, Frank. On the like we talk about fly-by-wire, we're talking about brake-by-wire, we're talking about autonomous cars, but the future is what I'm worried about is if kids are so interested in watching a screen and not actually going out and and being kids and playing, what's that really going to leave for the imagination for future generations? I mean, that's what I'm saying. And that's what I'm saying.
Maybe James, you and I are being curmudgeons. Can you imagine back in the 1500s when a child chose to maybe go to a church and read a book as opposed to going and working in the field?
That would be almost, that would be strange back then.
And imagine what the parents would have said, because the reason you went to church to read books was the churches are where the libraries were.
True.
Okay? Mm-hmm. And this is when books became printed as opposed, with Gutenberg and the press. So you're seeing almost a parallel happening here, but let me be a sociologist this morning.
All right.
All these things are a product of surplus. The fact that when economies are in a subsistence mode, everybody from children on are in the fields working.
True.
Okay? And they produce food and they eat the food that they produce, and they're just trying to make it from starving to death.
That's true.
As you have food and you can put food away and you can store food, certain parts of society say, go do this, go do that. You don't have to be in the fields today. Why don't you take some time and plaster up the house? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And more people forget how much an economy of surplus we are, how few people it takes in this country and in so much of the world to produce food anymore.
True.
Whereas that was not the case until the Green Revolution of the 60s, when chemical industrial fertilizers came on board, as did pesticides. Now, say what you want about these things. Okay, but for the first time ever, we had a world that could actually feed itself, given there were always droughts and famines in one part of the world, some other part of the world would overproduce, and that surplus could get shared across the world.
True.
We forget about that.
True. We do forget about that.
So as we become a society of surplus, we can take kids away from the field and put them in schools. We can put them in college. Some kids, I had an uncle that used to laugh about acidified kids who would actually, instead of going sweating in the fields and the ditches, would go to college and then go sweat for recreation and have to pay somebody.
Well, yeah, and that's what we're talking about. Like I said, maybe I'm just being a curmudgeon, worrying about the future by kids being lazy. I don't know. Frank, we're up against the clock. I don't know. It's 3. I'd love to sit here and carry on this conversation, but I got to go to a break. I got Scott Hobbs going to be calling in a minute from Mr. Rooter Plumbing. But thanks for calling this morning. I'll be talking to you again this Thursday morning. I think you're calling Thursday at 6:15, right?
See you then.
See you then, Frank. Bye-bye, everybody.
If you want the best deal in town for tires, you need to call Baytown Tires at 873-8900.
Hanson and the guys at Baytown Tires take pride in serving Panama City for over 20 years. Baytown Tires on Highway 98 in St. Andrews. All service work backed by a nationwide warranty.
Water is too powerful to fight alone. Mr. Rooter Plumbing. Sink, shower, and toilet emergency drain services.
All right, welcome back. This is our second half of our Monday morning show. Scott Hobbs calls every Monday morning. And we talk about preventative maintenance for your home, your septic tank, your sewer system, what you need to do. And Scott, I got to spend some time on the beach this weekend. Well, different beach up on the Atlantic Ocean. But one of the things they did tell me, the biggest problem they have on the beach houses is the septic tanks filling, not, they have to be pumped out, but they fill with sand. That seems to be the biggest thing. Is that they didn't realize how much their septic tanks filled up with sand, and about every 3 years or so, they have to get them pumped out just to get the sand out of them. Is that a big problem down here as well?
It is. It sure is. We get a lot of sand out of the septic systems. And unfortunately, over the years, the county is doing a really good job of making city sewer available out on the beach, but there's still pockets and areas that have septic as well.
And they do. And I know that's what they were talking to. And I said, can I use the downstairs bathroom? He said, no, that one's sanded in. I went, really? He said, yeah, so much sand over the years. The pipes they've sanded in, and we've got to do a lot of work on it. You can use the other one. I said, okay, no problem with that. But I said, well, is this a common problem? They said, just about everybody on this part of the beach is on septic tank. And if you don't get the septic tanks cleaned out they said about every 3 years, they're just literally full of sand from everything that happens. They're so old and everything. I said, well, I guess that's a common problem. But I know that you were talking to Dr. Shane, that y'all don't charge any overtime on Saturdays or Sundays or at night if there's an emergency, if you have to send a plumber out. Is that what we're talking about?
We have one price, day or night, no matter the day of the week. It's the same price. It's just easier on the customer. It's easier on us. And we do schedule a lot of calls after 5 o'clock for folks, kind of a first come, first served basis.
Right.
And on Saturdays as well, just to make it convenient for folks to schedule something rather than trying to take off work and getting a double whammy.
Now, we've talked earlier about the Advantage Plan. Now, if people are Advantage Plan customers and they need your service, they get put to the front of the line. They get put to the front of the line, so to speak, because Advantage Plan customers they actually have an advantage over other customers that call. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. If you're an Advantage Plan customer, you're our priority to us over a new customer, somebody who's never used us before. And that's come into play, several times over the years when we've had, freezes, everybody's pipes freeze up and bust, or when we've had, hurricanes and things like that. We've literally, had calls come in that were new customers, and we put them on hold and on standby so we could service our existing Advantage Plan customers first. Yeah. And then we give those guys a call after and say, hey, we're caught up. Do you still need us?
Well, and that's a good Advantage Plan. Really helped out in our business because we have several homes. And when you have rentals, sometimes they call you up and it's like 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Hey, my toilet won't drain or whatever, and you need to have someone come over there. And that is the advantage of having the Advantage Plan, because we can call y'all and y'all can come take care of it. But one of the things that someone was telling me the other day about homes over here, that when plumbers come over, that plumbers are able to look at the house and get the drain line and get an idea what they're going to have to spend before they actually charge you for it. Is there such a thing as upfront pricing when someone comes out to look at a?
Oh, well, sure. That's what we do. We have menu pricing, almost like a menu at a restaurant. So we have all the common tasks in a pricing schedule. We're using either a pricing manual or an iPad that has the price in there. So people say, well, you're going to charge me more because I'm got a Mercedes in my driveway. Absolutely not. It's the same price no matter what your status is. It's the price for that task.
Well, that's neat, because I know in my business we use what we call flat rate manual. I pull a manual out and it says, okay, to change the ECU on this Honda Accord is 0.3 hours or whatever, plus whatever it may be. I did not know there was a flat rate menu for houses, because every house is different. And I'm going, how can you have a flat rate manual because not every 2 houses, not all of them are exactly the same, but you at least have an idea. Is that how that works out? I guess that's how they do it, just the amount of time it takes to do a certain job. Is that how they price it out?
Well, sure. So some of our tasks are broken down, maybe a little more detailed than yours. I'm not sure exactly how yours works, but repairing a specific type of pipe, whether it's a a galvanized pipe or a copper pipe,
Mm-hmm.
we know if that pipe is exposed, how long that should take. Now, if we have, a multi-story building that is going to take some time to drain that down, then we have a task to drain down that building.
Mm-hmm.
So our technicians have to be pretty savvy to know all the circumstances involved in a 50-year-old house versus a 5-year-old house.
So speaking of technicians being savvy, how do they learn this skill about being savvy? Are they born that way? These technicians?
Well, I feel like I was born that way. I've been doing it so long. But no, we teach them. It's and we talk about this a lot. If somebody has good people skills, good home training, and they have mechanical abilities, and I don't know what it is, James. There's people born with the ability to know which way to turn a pair of channel locks. I'm not sure, but we'll teach them the techniques that are specific to plumbing, and that's how we prefer to do that. So we teach them our way to make sure that they're performing the task correctly and treating their customers correctly.
Is there a technical school here in Northwest Florida that teaches plumbing? I don't know if there used to be or still is or not, because that's an apprentice skill. Usually, if I'm not mistaken, even when I was a kid, you had a master plumber, and then you have apprentices or journeyman plumbers that learned the trade from the experienced plumber. Is that how it's still taught?
It's we teach it in house. I've called several of the technical schools around and ask them, hey, can you start up a plumbing class? And they'll say, sure, if you want to come teach it. And of course,
Oh yeah. I've heard that before. Yeah.
Maybe when I retire, I may do that, but no, there's none in our immediate area that teach plumbing, in a classroom setting. I sure wish there was.
Well,
I wish they would do it in the high schools. Give the young people an opportunity to spend half their day at least learning a technical skill.
Well, that's what I did in starting in the 11th grade. I went half a day to an industrial trade school and a half a day to my reading, writing, arithmetic class school, and so I learned a skill starting in the 11th grade, how to work on cars. And a lot of people say, well, why do you want to do that? Well, I saw back then in the 70s things were changing, the technology was changing. And before I started talking to you about plumbing, I thought plumbing technology, well, I didn't think it had changed. I thought it was the same thing for the last 50 to 100 years. But after talking to you, there's been a lot of changes in the way water gets in your house and the way water gets out of your house. And the technology, it's not like it used to be with cast iron pipes and lead and things that are not really good for you or the environment. Things have changed quite a bit, have they not, in the last 15, 20 years? As far as
they sure have.
Yeah.
Some of the big advances in heating the water, with the tankless hot water heaters, it's a little box on the side of your house that's computer controlled. The type of piping that we're using now is more advanced and I think more sustainable, will last longer than, galvanized and copper from the past. Even the copper over time erodes and has problems with electrolysis and things like that. So the new PEX piping, I think, is going to be a longer lasting pipe for us.
Yeah, PEX doesn't have buildup. Does it get the how galvanized will all corrode up on the inside? PEX doesn't do that, does it? I don't think.
No, it sure doesn't.
I don't think it's
not that I've ever seen.
I don't think it's capable of doing it. Where the galvanized pipe seems to have propensity to do that, to build that corrosion up in there. But I don't think PEX. The only thing PEX does, you can't expose it to sunlight. If you expose it to sunlight,
That's exactly right.
It gets brittle. It gets brittle and will break. So long as you can keep it dark or enclosed, it'll stay like that 20, 30, 40, 50 years, I'm guessing. I don't know. It hadn't been around that long. But they say they wouldn't be selling it to put in houses if it didn't last a long time. Of course, they said the same thing about that gray stuff, too. So
Polybutylene,
yeah,
sure did.
They did, didn't they?
Well, they sure did. And Shell Oil, they really got a slap on the hand over that.
Yeah.
It was billions of dollars worth of lawsuits to, because they manufactured the resin for it, and they had to pay out and have folks' houses repiped. It was a bad mess.
It really was.
So far, this has been a really good product, and I think it'll continue to be that way as well.
Well, gentlemen, you were talking about that was Shell Motor Company came up with the resin. Is that who you said was, or Shell?
Yeah, Shell Oil came up with the resin for the polybutylene, and they were the ones that took the big hit whenever
they said
it started to fail.
Yeah, well, they said that, I remember when General Motors came out with Dexcool, the orange antifreeze, they were talking about it's good for 5 years, 150,000 miles, and people followed that, but that was for normal use, not severe service use. And what ended up happening when cars got about 50 to 75,000 miles out of warranty, the engines were going bad because of the cooling leaks and everything. And General Motors had a class action lawsuit that had to change it from 5 years, 150,000 miles to 2 years, 30,000 miles is what they tell to be done on Dexcool now. And they had to pay back lots and lots of money to get car engines and cars replaced. So so they've learned a lesson too about chemicals don't always do what they say they're going to do, and that's in my industry. And a lot of we actually called Dexcool death kill there for a while because it seemed like everything we put in died, but it wasn't that it was bad. It was just we didn't know how to take care of it. You can't mix it with city water. You can't let it stay in there a long time. You got to exchange it every couple of years. And the same thing in your business right now. Things don't always stay the same. The drain lines don't stay the same. They don't always stay clean. And drain lines, you were telling me, need to really be inspected every 3 to 5 years or once a year, or how often should they be inspected, your drain lines?
Well, our Advantage Plan customers, with the proper access, we'll give a quick look to those while we're out doing an annual plumbing checkup.
Okay.
But you should have that drain line inspected on a frequent basis.
Mm-hmm.
Every 3 years would be fine. If you can do it once a year, that's even better.
Yeah.
Even PVC that we know is a kind of like the PEX pipe is going to last for years and years.
Mm-hmm.
There are concerns with it, and you will get built up on a drain line.
Yeah.
Though it's PVC, it'll be kind of like a clogged artery.
Right.
The bacteria build up from the fats, oils, and grease will choke off a pipe, and it's better to know about that ahead of time. Or if it was a bad installation,
mm-hmm.
or maybe a heavy truck or machinery have run over the pipe out in the yard.
I bet that's common.
Crack or fissure in the pipe. You got root intrusion, so there's a lot to consider.
I bet you that's a very common problem where people have their drain.
It is.
I bet you a big truck or something's run over it. 5, 10 years ago, no one knew about it, and then gradually over a period of time, now they're having problems. And that's where you
maybe
come in.
You had a swimming pool built in the backyard, and you had these dump trucks running over your drain line to the city sewer, and you didn't realize it was there, and it's created a belly or a break in the line. So it's good to have a checkup once in a while.
Well, speaking of checkup, give everyone, if you're listening, give them a call at 763-2001. Let them come by. There's upfront pricing. There's no overtime on Saturdays or Sundays or at night. No extra heavy charges or things like that. Just give them a call, 763-2001, and let them come check out your piping and your drains and your supply lines, even your heater and septic tank. Get all that taken care of in one place. Mr. Reuter Plumbing. Scott, thank you so much. We'll talk to you again next week, sir. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Part of what I'd like to let you know is what we do and how we work our system. Basically, we've got about 700 stocking dealers scattered around the 15 counties here in the Big Bend area of the state. I run a fleet of trucks, vans, and what we call hotshot vehicles to deliver to our dealers quickly so they can help service you as fast and efficiently as they can. Provide timely and efficient service, and we're there to take care of our dealers who in turn can take care of their customers.